Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Inspired and Empowered Living TV show and podcast. We are live Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern on talk4tv.com, w4wn.com, and my YouTube channel. And today we are talking about empowered ways to deal with yours and others' anger. Anger isn't something to fear or suppress. It's a powerful signal that, when understood and handled consciously, can lead to deeper healing, stronger boundaries, and more authentic relationships. During the show, you will learn more how to navigate yours and others' anger so that you can create confidence, clarity, and compassion in your life and in your relationships. We'll talk more about how to decode the deeper meaning behind and message behind anger, grounding ways to stay calm when emotions run high, and empowered communication strategies to de-escalate conflict. And we'll also talk about reactive versus responsive behavior and why it matters. So, and this episode is not a replacement for therapy or counseling. It is for educational purposes only. I'm your host, Nancy Deutsch, licensed clinical social worker, certified hypnotherapist, and intuitive business expert. I combine my counseling, coaching, and intuitive abilities to transform your life. And what I want to support all of you in knowing is that anger can be this amazing emotion that can inspire you, empower you when you channel it in a healthy way. However, most of us grew up in families where anger was destructive. And we're going to talk more about what is constructive anger, what is destructive anger. So that's also part of what we're going to be talking about as well throughout this episode, and perhaps other episodes in the future. What I realized, and I really wanted to talk more specifically about anger, is we were talking about emotional intelligence and emotional regulation in past episodes. And one of the biggest emotions that really needs that ability to learn how to control your reactions and be able to learn how to calm yourself down when you have reacted. So the first thing, since I'm talking about reaction, let me talk a little bit more about that. And of course, I always love your questions. So anybody who wants to ask any questions as I'm talking about these things, please feel free. So the first thing that I want to share with you is an explanation, and I call it my Psych 101 lesson. So you have your conscious mind, and your conscious mind is the part of you that makes the decision. So when we're talking about reactive anger versus responsive, or healthy versus destructive, reactive anger is unhealthy and can be very destructive. Whereas responsive, being in response, is you'll be able to respond and it can be very constructive. And with your conscious mind empowers you to make the decision to take an action so that you can, if you find you're reacting, if you find you've been triggered, which I want you all to know that it's common, it's understandable if you get triggered, because you're human and we're all going to get triggered somehow, some way. So it's learning to be able to become aware of the triggers and then be able to do something about it, which is your conscious mind making that decision. Now, your subconscious mind is the part of you that reacts. So when you feel triggered, when you feel like oh my God, you feel so angry, or you notice maybe you're not at the really angry stage or even a rage stage, but you're noticing you're getting a little annoyed or you're getting frustrated. And all of those emotions are derivatives of anger. And so that reaction is coming from your subconscious mind. And your subconscious mind, from the moment you were conceived to present time, has recorded every moment you've been alive. And that includes limiting beliefs and emotions. So when you're in reaction and you get triggered, and what I mean by triggered is you're reacting to either a person, a situation, something that happened. And so when you get triggered and you react, that's coming from your subconscious mind. And then you have your superconscious mind, which is the part of you that is your higher self. It's the part of you, your higher aspects of self. So your higher self is the wise, unconditionally loving part of you that actually can help you get into emotional regulation and support you. And your conscious mind and your superconscious mind work together, can work together. And then you have your soul, that shining light of who you are. And that is also part of your superconscious mind. And you can also call upon your angels or your guides or beings of light to support you if you've gotten triggered or you're reacting. So all of those are possibilities that can happen when you're working with these parts of yourself. Now, so what happens is when let's talk about, so you have the reactive and you have the responsive. So when you're in reaction, and the other thing that I want to talk about that I've talked about before, but let's talk about it again, is the fight, flight, and freeze reaction response. And what happens is fight, flight, and freeze are basically your instinctive subconscious, coming from your subconscious, instinctive reactions that happen for you. No, like you get triggered like that. It's instinctive. It happens automatically. And you can't control that. However, okay, this is the big however. However, you can control once you become aware, oh, I'm reacting. I'm triggered. I'm feeling angry, or I'm feeling annoyed, or I'm feeling frustrated. Once you become aware of it, then that conscious mind has kicked in and you can make a decision to do something about it in a constructive way, because you don't want to be reacting in destructive ways. Because bottom line is, and I'm always using the phrase, when you feel a feeling and an emotion, especially anger, you don't want to be hurting yourself, like sabotaging behaviors, addictive behaviors, hurting yourself in any way. And it's also a process of learning when you're doing self-destructive and behaviors, and we'll be talking more about that at some point. So it's really learning and understanding. And then you want to make sure you're not hurting other people. When you react and there's destructive reaction, you do not want to be hitting, hurting, doing anything that could hurt someone else. And you don't want to be destroying property. So that emotion, and it's really important to be working on being able to get a grip, or be able to calm yourself down when you've been in that reaction mode. So, and responding comes from your conscious mind and your superconscious. And when you're responding, you're making that decision. What can I do to take care of myself? Or what am I feeling? And then understanding. Now, we talked about anger and what anger is really telling you. Now, anger is not a flaw. It's actually a signal. So when you're having, let's say, the stress reaction response, it's, like I said, instinctual. So in order to survive in our life, in the world, even caveman days, because we are like the animals, we have those instincts. And your instinct to go into aggression, fight mode, is to protect yourself, to keep you safe. And so, however, what happens is in our society, in this day and age, is if you are in chronic mode, you may have chronic stress. You may feel anger chronically. You may get triggered really easily. And it's going to be learning how to calm yourself down, to take care of yourself, to get back into that emotional balance, regulation. So think about, so what happens with anger is, very often anger can be a signal for unmet needs. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is, if you feel, and start thinking about perhaps times in your life. Let's take a text example. And you text somebody, maybe you text your partner, maybe you text your close friend, maybe you text a business associate or a client, and you don't hear back from them, or you don't hear back from them right away, or you don't hear back from them on your terms. And you notice that you're starting to get triggered. And you notice you're starting to get angry. And then you can start thinking out of control. Why haven't they gotten back to me? Is it, like, what's wrong? Or why are they not doing this? And you can start blaming, or you could start shaming, or you can make yourself even more upset. And so your need is to be heard, to be answered. And if you have a need to be heard, to be seen, to be loved, I mean, all of that, when you're not getting that need met, you can go into anger. So let me give you, like, I've talked about Jenny and Jimmy. It's been a while, but we're going to visit Jenny and Jimmy. So what would happen with Jenny and Jimmy is Jenny would just say something or do something, and Jimmy was what we call a rager. And so what would happen is Jimmy would start screaming and yelling at Jenny. Now that's destructive behavior. That's not healthy anger. And destructive anger is any kind of anger, hitting, yelling, screaming, reacting like that. And then unhealthy anger is being able to become aware of the reaction and then process it and then learn how to communicate it in a healthy way. So what would happen is Jenny would say or do something and it would trigger Jimmy. In fact, Jimmy was triggered very often, and there was this energy between them. And so Jimmy was reacting from his subconscious mind. And what was happening is Jenny was triggering actually Jimmy's mother. Because when Jimmy was growing up, his mother was very controlling. She would go into rages. And so he learned that behavior. And very often, if you look in the generational lines, there's usually, very often, not all the time, but there's usually someone who has anger issues, and somebody in the next generation can pick it up. Now, what might happen for you is you may not have the anger issues, but you may, like Jenny, you may end up marrying a partner or getting into a friendship or a relationship where the other person has anger issues. And so it's because you've learned that pattern. This is all subconscious. It wasn't like you figured it out and you, whatever, it was instinctive. And so those unmet needs. So what would happen is Jimmy really wanted to be heard. He wanted to be loved. He wanted to be understood. But what was happening is the dynamic between them was no matter what Jenny did, she wasn't going to be able to satisfy him because Jimmy needed to learn how to handle his anger. And when they came to me, we worked together so that Jimmy learned to handle anger management, and Jenny learned how to, what to do if the energy, the anger got out of control, to take care of herself. So anger, and this is destructive anger, but what happened is it was a signal. They knew they needed help. They finally went for help. And we started working together to help them heal and process. So, and another unmet need that you may have that could be trigger anger is feeling disrespected. So if you have felt disrespected and all of a sudden you're like, this person's not respecting me. Now, they may or may not be aware of that, but you've gotten triggered. So this is all about understanding the signals, all about tuning into the messages that may be happening so that you can then do something about it. Then another way anger is a signal is boundaries. When you are not clear in your boundaries, or you don't know your boundaries, or you're not sure of your boundaries, it's more likely people will cross your boundaries. And when your boundaries are crossed, then you very often can become angry. You can become irritated or upset. Maybe you don't even realize what happened. But learning to understand, and that's part of the journey, and learning to understand what's triggering me now. What is this anger trying to tell me? What do I need to learn from it? You can ask yourself those questions. And when you do that, it can lead you to realize that you were not saying no, or you weren't really clear in your boundaries. So I'll give you an example. Somebody I work with, I'll call her Selma. So Selma was a giver. So such a giver, and she was a giver. And what would happen is, and everybody, like all the people in her life, knew she was a giver. And we see hello, whoever just said hello. And so she was a giver. And so people would ask her, can you do that? Ask her for favors. And Selma didn't say no. She was a people pleaser. And what she started noticing is she started getting angry and angrier. And she wasn't really sure why she was getting so angry. And when her and I started talking about, I said, is this something that you really want to do? Or do you feel obligated? Or are you having a hard time saying no? And she started thinking about it, and she realized that she really didn't want to do the favor. Like sometimes it was okay and sometimes it wasn't. But she needed to get in touch when it was not okay and learn how to say no. And so her anger was the signal that for her, that if she said yes, if she felt angry or resentful, it was really a no. If she felt like, oh, I really want to do this, this feels good, because she, like I said, givers love to give. And she may have wanted to do something, but it's not all the time. And if it felt right and it felt good, it would feel fine. So I invite you to look at your anger and to look at, are you setting enough boundaries? And if you're getting angry or resentful, now resentful is another form, another derivative of anger. Resentful, bitterness, um, frustration, like I said before, all of these are derivatives. And then, of course, like there's a scale of getting a little annoyed, a little irritated, then that increases. It depends how much you're getting triggered and what the trigger is. And if you get an intense reaction, what that's saying is that there is something that really needs healing for you. And this is an opportunity for you to be able to explore and discover what is it that you need to heal. Now, another way that anger comes in is if you feel like you've been treated unfairly, or you see others being treated unfairly. And so you may feel triggered and get angry. And so it's learning to be able to be aware of that trigger. And here's the thing. It's once you become aware that you've been triggered, then you can do something about it. But if you're not aware, then you're not going to be able to do anything about it. So, and then what happens with anger, I will tell you, is that it can be a cover for other feelings. Like some people get angry instead of feeling grief or sadness. Some people get angry because they're really hurt. And the hurt is underneath the anger. It's easier to be angry than to feel the hurt. And so underneath the anger, it could be fear. And so I invite you to ask, if your anger had a voice, what would it say? And what would it say? And is it protecting you in some way? Because anger is a protection. Remember, I talked about the fight flight. It's one of the aggression is one of the ways that we protected ourselves. However, now it's learning to turn it around so that it's not used in a destructive way, but you turn around the anger and use it in a constructive way. And when you do that, there is such power. You really feel empowered. And it creates passion. When you feel, and because all the emotions, like when you turn that anger into something that is constructive, you can have passion and purpose around it. I'll give you an example. So one of the things that very often a foundation can be created because the family wanted to make a difference in, let's say, their loved one. Maybe their loved one passed. Maybe they were murdered. Maybe it was suicide. Maybe it was a mugging or hurting or, something that happened. Maybe it was a disease. And so the person or the family can feel really angry and feel that injustice and feel unfair and feel like there's all this charge around it. And what they do is they turn that into a foundation. Turn it into a foundation to start helping other people that have been hurt, maybe mugged, or other family members, where there is, like, I know of a charity where it's growing and growing, and the person who started it, her son had an addiction problem. And what happened was he overdosed, and she started this organization. And now she's helping other parents and families heal from the loss of their loved ones. And so, what I want you to know is that anger is this powerful, amazing, empowering tool, but it needs to be worked with and channeled in a way so that you can have the benefit and the constructive aspects rather than destructive. And I will also tell you that when anger is used destructively, it can ruin relationships. A lot of the people who are divorced, or there's a big distance in relationships, whether it's a romantic partner or a friendship, it's because anger was not expressed in a healthy way. Sometimes, like with Jenny and Jimmy, if they had not sought help, they probably would not have survived their relationship. They probably would have gotten a divorce. And so, know that all of that can really be part of the healing journey. And you really want to make sure that you're handling your anger and what to do for yourself when the other person in your life is the angry person. But it all starts with you. And it starts with you feeling safe. And it starts with you taking care of yourself. And it starts with what you need to do so that you have physical safety. Because if you're in any place where you are not safe, then please go for help. Please be able to find that physical safety. Now, there's also the emotional safety. If you're with someone or you have a relationship with someone, whether it's a partner or even a friend, and you don't know when they're going to go off and rage or say or do things that would hurt you. That's not physically hurt you, but emotionally hurt you. Then that's not emotional safety. So bottom line is you want to make sure that you find your safety, that you find a way to protect yourself, take care of yourself, and set those boundaries. So, and like I said, anger carries energy. And when you channel it in a healthy way, it becomes that passion and power and purpose. So, one of the things that you can start asking yourself is, if you're not sure if you're doing destructive anger or constructive anger, is asking yourself, am I trying to hurt myself or someone else? Or am I trying to heal? Because remember, anger is the signal. It's the tool that can empower you to make the changes in your life. Anger can be that empowering tool, part of you, emotion that gives you the energy to say no to the person you need to say no to. It could be leaving a relationship or a job, or leaving a relationship, a job, and then starting your own business. And anger could be that emotion that inspires you to take action in a healthy way so that you are changing your life and changing others. Because when you start dealing with anger in healthy ways and you start changing you, everyone else around you changes. You are the beginning of the change. And that is really important for you to remember. And the other thing to ask yourself, is there something, some kind of positive action? Like, is there social action, or what kind of positive action can I do with the anger? But we're going to talk more about that. Okay. So it's really about learning how to write down. And again, you can start journaling what's happening for you. Like, here's the thing, when you have that reaction and you start asking yourself the questions like, uh, did you, like, what was the moment that you felt triggered? What was the moment you started reacting? What happened? Was it something that you heard? Was it something someone said? Was it something that someone did, a behavior? And you write down and you start thinking about it, and then you can start processing it. And you can ask, what was the emotion that was underneath? Was it an unmet need that you really wanted to be heard or seen or respected? Was it an a time when you weren't setting a boundary? Someone crossed your boundaries and you felt really angry, maybe even violated. And to start looking at that. And then learning, okay, so what was triggered? And ask. It's learning to ask, what was this trying to tell me? You look at the emotion underneath and perhaps even ask yourself, where did this begin? Because when you get triggered, this is back to the subconscious mind, when you get triggered and you have reacted, and those unmet needs, or those not being able to say no, or you not being able to express, or you being a people pleaser, all of that is more than likely coming from your childhood. And so it's learning to understand that part of you so that you can heal it. And when you do the healing work, it's powerful work. It's your opportunity to be able to create transformation in your life. And when you do, you create the transformation all around. So we're going to continue to talk about this more and how to understand in an empowered way to be able to work with anger, deal with it, process it, and then take constructive, healthy behaviors and healthy communication so that you are feeling healthier and better and more passionate, more empowered, inspired, and feeling on purpose. And so join us next week for more inspired and empowered living, for a thriving business and life. And we are live Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern on talk4tv.com, w4wn.com, and my YouTube channel. And you can hear the podcast on Spotify, Apple, Pandora, iHeartRadio, and Amazon, and many more. And I wish you an inspired and empowered week and an inspired and empowered day and night. Have a great one, everybody. Bye for now.